So you're ready for a career shift, huh? Thinking about becoming a cartographer. Well, it's definitely more than just, loving maps.
It really
It's
is.
this whole blend of like art and science and tech all rolled into one. And we've got your RoleCatcher guide right here. And let me tell you, some of this stuff is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Ready to see if this is the path for you?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so first things first, when we say cartographer, what does that even mean in today's world? I mean, it's not just about drawing coastlines anymore, right?
No, not at all. I mean, yes, cartographers make maps, but it's so much more than that now.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. They're kind of like detectives, you know?
What?
Yeah. They take all these different pieces of information, like satellite imagery, scientific measurements, even things like economic trends, and they put them all together to create these visual representations of what's going on.
Okay, so it's about telling a story with the data. I like that.
Exactly.
The guide uses this example of like incorporating demographics and economic data with geographic information. Can you give me a for instance?
Sure. Like, imagine you're trying to understand how a city is changing, right?
Okay.
A cartographer might combine census data about population growth with, say, data on new business development.
Interesting.
And then they could create a map that shows where the city is growing the fastest, maybe even predict where future growth might happen.
And that's useful for like city planners and stuff.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. For city planners, for businesses looking to invest, even for residents who want to see how their neighborhoods are changing.
Okay, so it's not just about making a pretty picture, it's about giving people the information they need to make decisions.
Exactly. And that's where the design element comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because a good map isn't just accurate, it's also easy to understand, visually appealing.
That's what surprised me when I was looking through the guide, how much design sense you actually need to be a cartographer. They were talking about visual hierarchy, color theory.
Right. It's crucial. You're taking complex data and making it digestible. A good cartographer is a storyteller, using maps to communicate clearly. Think about it like this. You've got a map showing wildfire locations, right? But then overlay that with a layer of population density. Boom. You instantly see the areas at the greatest risk. That's a cartographer's magic, turning raw data into actionable insights.
That's actually pretty cool. I never thought about it like that. But, there's one thing in this guide that really threw me for a loop. It lists reading comprehension as a core skill. And I gotta ask.
I know what you mean. It sounds a little strange for a visual field, right?
Exactly.
But honestly, it's more common than you might think.
Really?
Oh, yeah. See, cartographers, they often have to go through tons of research papers, technical documents, all sorts of dense written material.
Oh, okay.
And they have to be able to quickly understand all that complicated information so they can then turn it into those clear and insightful visuals that we were just talking about.
So you're telling me that cartographers need to be like total data nerds?
Pretty much, huh? They've got to love digging into data, spotting patterns, and then figuring out the best way to present that information visually. It's a fascinating blend of left brain, right brain thinking.
Wow, the depth of this field is really impressive. Now, the guide does give us a little glimpse into what the work life looks like. But I'm curious, what's the day-to-day feeling of the job? Is it like all quiet contemplation over maps or...
It can be surprisingly diverse, the day-to-day. You could be in a quiet office, totally immersed in data analysis, building visualizations on your computer. But then, the next day, you might be out in the field using high-tech equipment to gather information firsthand.
Wait, hold on. Out in the field, what does that even look like for a cartographer these days?
Well, we're talking about using things like GPS units, laser scanners, and even drones to map out different areas.
Drones. Seriously.
Oh, yeah. Drones are becoming a pretty big deal in cartography, especially when you're dealing with large or hard-to-reach areas.
Wow, I gotta admit, I did not picture that being part of a cartographer's toolkit.
It's amazing how technology is changing the game. It's making things more efficient, letting us map areas that were practically impossible to reach before. But you're right, it does mean that sometimes you might find yourself out in the middle of nowhere with just your equipment and your thoughts for a company.
So you better enjoy your own company, right?
That's a good point. But then other times, you'll be working closely with a team, collaborating on projects, brainstorming ideas.
Okay, so there's a bit of both worlds.
Exactly. And that's something the guide really emphasizes. You need to be comfortable working independently, but also be a strong communicator and collaborator. Being able to adapt your style for different audiences is key.
So it's not just about the technical skills, it's about those people skills too. Makes sense, I guess. You're not just making maps for yourself, you're sharing them with the world.
Exactly. And the way you communicate your findings can make all the difference, and how well they're understood and used.
So speaking of tech skills, the guide mentions ArcGIS a lot, which makes sense. That seems like the industry standard, right?
Yeah, it's pretty ubiquitous in the field these days.
Yeah.
But you know what else it mentions? Python.
Oh, yeah, right. It did say something of programming. Is that actually becoming essential for cartographers? Like, are we talking everybody needs to know it, or?
I'd say it's definitely becoming more and more important. It used to be that you could get by with just knowing how to use the pre-built software,
Yeah.
but that's changing fast.
So it's not enough to just know how to use the tools. You got to know how to build them too.
In a way, yeah. See, with Python, cartographers can create their own custom tools, you know, automate tasks, and really dig deep into the nitty-gritty of geospatial data analysis. It gives them a lot more flexibility and power.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, someone who's serious about making this career shift, brushing up on those coding skills, maybe playing around with some geospatial libraries, that wouldn't hurt.
Not at all. It's a smart move. It shows you're willing to go beyond the basics and that you're invested in staying ahead of the curve.
Which, let's be honest, in a field like cartography where the tech is changing so rapidly, is pretty essential.
Absolutely. You got to be adaptable, always willing to learn new things. It's an exciting time to be in the field, that's for sure.
It really does sound like it. Okay, so we've talked about the day-to-day, the skills. What about the actual career path? The guide outlines those different stages, from entry level all the way up to senior cartographer. But I gotta ask, what does it actually feel like to climb that ladder? Like, what are some of the milestones along the way?
Oh, there are so many rewarding moments. I mean, can you imagine leading your very first fieldwork expedition? You're out there gathering data in some breathtaking remote location.
That sounds pretty amazing.
It really is. Or how about the feeling of mentoring someone new to the field? Seeing them finally grasp a concept you've taught them.
Yeah, sharing that knowledge, passing the torch, so to speak. I bet that's incredibly rewarding.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as you gain more experience, you start taking on bigger and more complex projects. You might be leading a team, designing maps for major publications, or even presenting your research at international conferences. The possibilities are pretty incredible.
It sounds like the sky's the limit. Now, the guide also mentioned something called specialization. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what are some of the ways that cartographers can kind of focus their expertise?
Oh, sure. There are so many different paths you can take. Let's say you're really interested in cities, for example. You could become an expert in urban planning.
Okay.
And in that case, you wouldn't just be creating, pretty maps of cities. You'd be using your skills to help shape how they grow and develop.
Oh, interesting.
So you might visualize traffic patterns to try to make commutes better. Or maybe you'll identify underserved areas so that resources can be allocated more effectively.
Wow, so it's like you're actually using maps to make cities better places to live, more livable, more functional, more human-centered.
Exactly. Or maybe you're really passionate about the environment. You could go into environmental mapping. That could involve anything from, say, tracking deforestation in the Amazon using satellite imagery to mapping the migration patterns of endangered species to help with conservation efforts.
So it's like you're giving a voice to the voiceless, advocating for the planet through maps. Man, I'm starting to see how this career path can be both intellectually stimulating and just like deeply fulfilling.
Oh, absolutely. And we've only just scratched the surface. You could also specialize in things like health mapping, where you track disease outbreaks, or even historical cartography, where you piece together the past using old maps and manuscripts.
Yeah.
The possibilities really are endless.
Wow, you weren't kidding. It really does seem like there's something for everyone in this field. It's so much more than just creating, static representations of the world. It's about using data to tell stories, to solve problems, to make a real difference. But let's say someone is completely sold on this path. Based on this RoleCatcher guide, what would you say is like the #1 piece of advice for them to actually break into the field?
Hands down, it's practical experience. Get your hands dirty. The guide really stresses this. Internships, volunteering, anything you can do to build your portfolio and get some real-world exposure.
So it's not enough to just have the theoretical knowledge. You got to know how to apply it.
Exactly. Employers want to see that you can take what you've learned in the classroom and actually turn it into tangible results.
So don't just study those spatial relationships. Design a map for your local community center.
That's the idea.
Or volunteer with a local organization that uses GIS.
Now you're thinking like a cartographer. It's all about finding those opportunities to apply your skills and make those connections in the field.
Speaking of connections, the guide mentions networking quite a bit. And I'm wondering, how important is that really in a field like this? Is it make or break, or just a nice to have?
Oh, it's huge. In a specialized field like cartography, networking can make all the difference. Oh, yeah. Attending conferences, joining professional organizations like the International Cartographic Association,
Yeah.
these aren't just things you do to, make your resume look good. They're invaluable opportunities to learn from people who are already out there doing the work, to hear about new trends, and to make those connections that could lead to your dream job. You never know who you might meet.
So polish up that elevator pitch.
Exactly.
Get ready to mingle with your fellow map enthusiasts. I get it. It can be kind of intimidating networking, but it sounds like it's an essential part of the game in this field.
It is. They say it's not always about what you know, but who you know. And sometimes the most unexpected encounters can open doors you never even knew existed.
There's something kind of exciting about that, those serendipitous moments. Okay, but let's not sugarcoat it. The guide does mention the interview process, and I'm guessing it can be pretty rigorous. What should someone be prepared for when they're trying to land that coveted cartography position?
Well, for starters, be ready to talk specifics. Don't just say you're proficient in ArcGIS. Be prepared to discuss particular functionalities, projects you've tackled using it. They want to see that you really know your stuff.
It's like that old saying, the devil is in the details.
Exactly. And be prepared to think on your feet. You might get a hypothetical mapping scenario thrown at you. They'll want to see how you approach it, how you break down the problem.
So they're not just looking for technical skills. They want to see your thought process, how you problem solve in real time.
Exactly. They want to see that you can think critically and creatively, come up with innovative solutions.
It sounds like you really need to bring your A game to these interviews.
You do.
Uh,
But also, don't be afraid to let your passion shine through. Enthusiasm can go a long way, especially in a field like this.
that's a good reminder. Passion is contagious. It shows you're genuinely invested in your craft and that you really want to be there.
Exactly. And speaking of showing you're invested, we've talked a lot about the technical skills, the experience, but there's another aspect the guide mentions that's really important: certifications.
Oh yeah, certifications, right. There was a whole section on that. Can you refresh my memory? What's the deal with certifications in the cartography world?
Well, think of them like a stamp of approval. They tell potential employers that, hey, this cartographer, they know their stuff. They've gone above and beyond to demonstrate their skills and knowledge.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about having the credentials to back it up.
Exactly. And different certifications carry different weight. The guide specifically mentions the GISP, that's the Certified Geographic Information Systems Professional, as like the gold standard for GIS professionals.
Okay, so that's definitely one to aspire to. Are there any other certifications worth looking into?
Oh, for sure. The Certified Cartographic Technician, or CCT, focuses specifically on, cartographic techniques and technologies. It's a good option for those just starting out or anyone who really wants to prove their proficiency in those core cartography areas.
It's like having a specialized toolkit, all polished and ready to go. So it sounds like, regardless of where you are in your cartography journey, whether you're just starting out or looking to, level up your career, certifications can be a really valuable tool to have in your back pocket.
Absolutely. They show potential employers that you're committed to professional development, that you're keeping up to date with the latest technologies and standards, and that you're ready to take on new challenges.
It's like a visual representation of your expertise.
Exactly.
It really is like leveling up your skills, getting that official recognition.
It is. And, it's not just about checking boxes either. A lot of these certification programs, they offer ongoing learning opportunities, so you're constantly kind of, expanding your skill set, staying up to date.
Which in a field like this is so important.
Absolutely.
Because it's changing so rapidly. And that actually makes me think, this guide, it focuses a lot on what we think of as traditional cartography, right? But I'm curious, with the digital world exploding the way it is, are those lines even blurring anymore between like the old school cartography and what's happening in the digital realm?
Oh, absolutely. They're definitely blurring.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really, really exciting time to be in this field because those classic cartography principles that we've been talking about, they're now being applied to, gosh, practically everything. Designing user interfaces for navigation apps, creating these really immersive virtual reality experiences.
So somebody who's interested in this field now, they might not ever actually like make a paper map.
You're right.
They could be shaping the digital landscapes that we're all, interacting with on a daily basis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about the maps that are on your phone, the ones that you use all the time, probably without even really thinking about it too much.
Right.
Those are the products of cartographers, designers, programmers, all working together to create something that's functional and accurate and, you know, aesthetically pleasing as well.
That just blows my mind how much cartography is happening behind the scenes that we don't even realize. It really highlights how relevant this field is, in today's world. So, with all of that said, in this kind of like rapidly changing environment, what would you say is the most important skill for a cartographer to really thrive?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, there's so many important skills, but if I had to pick just one, I would say adaptability, hands down.
Adaptability.
Adaptability. Because the tools are changing, the technology is changing, the ways that people are even consuming maps are changing. It's constant evolution. So you have to be someone who's not afraid of that, someone who's actually energized by it, who's always ready to learn new things and kind of, roll with the punches.
So it's not about just mastering ArcGIS today, it's about being ready for whatever comes next.
Exactly. And that's actually something that the guide talks about too, is the importance of mindset.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you need to be curious, you need to be a little bit fearless, you need to kind of view those challenges as, exciting puzzles to solve, not roadblocks.
So it's that combination of like you've got to have the technical chops, but you also need to have that really flexible, forward-thinking mindset.
Absolutely. I think the future of this field, it belongs to those people who are excited about the unknown, who want to push those boundaries and who, never lose sight of the power that maps have to really shape our understanding of the world.
I love that. That's incredibly inspiring. This deep dive has been, to say the least, eye-opening.
Yeah.
It seems like cartography is a field that has like this incredibly rich past, this really vibrant present, and a future that is just like bursting with potential.
It really is.
So to our listener, if any of this has resonated with you, if you're feeling that pull towards the world of maps, I say go for it. What have you got to lose?
Exactly. You might just surprise yourself and, discover this passion you never knew you had.
And you never know what incredible things you might create. Well, on that note, a huge thank you to you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cartography.
It was my pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed exploring this fascinating career path with us. Until next time, keep those maps close at hand and your minds open to the endless possibilities that await.